Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to the English Dharma services. My name is You Lu, and today I would like to talk about what the Buddha did when he was an elephant in one of his past lives. This story is from the Shadanta Jataka. Jatakas are a collection of over 500 past life stories that the Buddha recorded upon his enlightenment. They can be found in the Pali Canon, the Chinese Canon, as well as the Tibetan Canon. The Shadanta Jataka can be found in the Pali Canon as Jataka number 514, and you can also find this Jataka in the Chinese Canon, recorded in the Sutra of the Collection of Six Paramitas and Samyutta Ratnapitaka Sutra. And the story goes like this. Once the Buddha was teaching to an assembly at Jetavana. Among the assembly was a novice nun who was admiring the Buddha's handsome appearance and wondered if she had in her previous lives been a wife of the Buddha. Using her supernatural powers, she was able to recall the time when the Buddha was an elephant by the name of Shadanta, and she was his wife. But as she was recalling this past life, tears started to fall from her eyes, and seeing this, the Buddha told his past life story. A long time ago, there lived 8,000 elephants near the Himalayas, the chief of which was Shadanta. He was white and measured 4 meters tall and 5.5 meters long. He had a trunk 2.6 meters long and 6 tusks that were each 1.4 meters long. He had taken refuge in the Triple Gem and gave rise to the vow of attaining Buddhahood. Shadanta had 2 wives, namely Mahasubhada and Julasubhada. Once he was swimming in the lake with his wives. An elephant offered a lotus to Shadanta. Shadanta accepted the flower and presented it to Mahasubhada. On seeing this, Julasubhada conceived a grudge against Shadanta. One day, Julasubhada offered wild fruits she had gathered to 500 Paticca Buddhas and made a prayer. When I passed away, may I be reborn as the royal maiden Subhada, and on the coming of age, may I become the queen. Then I will charm the king and have him send a hunter to kill Shadanta. Shortly after she made this prayer, she died. Julasubhada was then reborn as the royal maiden Subhada, and when she was of suitable age, her parents gave her in marriage to the king. She then recalled her former existence and thought, my prayer is now fulfilled, and now I will have this elephant's tusk brought to me. Then she lay in bed and pretended to be sick. Hearing that the Queen Subhada was sick, the king came to visit her, and the queen told him about a desire she wished to attain. She said, Great king, my desire is hard to attain. I will not now say what it is, but I will have all the hunters that there are in your kingdom gathered here. Then will I tell it in the midst of them. The king agreed and gave orders to his ministers to gather all the hunters in the kingdom. In no time, 60,000 hunters were gathered and brought to the queen. Then the queen spoke to them, saying that she had dreamt of a white, 6-tusked elephant, and she craved for his tusk, and that if she failed to get the tusk, she would die. After these words, Subhada spotted Sonutara among the hunters and asked for Sonutara to complete this mission. Then Subhadra proceeded to tell Sonutara of the whereabouts of Shadanta, the elephant. Due north, beyond 7 mountains vast, one comes to Golden Cliff at last, a height by goblin forms possessed, and bright with flowers from foot to crest. Beneath this goblin peak is seen a cloud-shaped mass of darkest green, a royal banyan tree whose roots yield vigor to 8,000 shoots. There dwells invincible in might, this elephant 6-tusked and white, with herd 8,000 strong for fight. Their tusks to chariot poles are like. Winged swift are there to guard or strike. Panting and grim they stand and glare, provoked by slightest breath of air. If they one born of man should see, their wrath consumes him utterly. Sonutara, on hearing this, was terrified to death, and the queen Subhadra assured him, saying, "My friend hunter, I made this prayer to kill this elephant and get his tusks when I gave a gift to the Pratikya Buddhas. Do not fear and rest assured that this will be fulfilled." Sonutara agreed and replied, "Fair lady, I will kill the elephant and bring you the tusks." Filled with joy, Subhadra provided him with everything that he would need on his journey. Sonutara set off from the city, and over 8 years, 8 months, and 8 days, he traversed 17 different tracks till he reached a mountainous region, crossed over 6 mountains, and climbed to the top of Golden Cliff. There he spotted an elephant, 6-tusked and white. He waited for a suitable time when the elephants went to bathe, and dug a pit as a hiding place. When the pit was finished, he donned monastic robes, and taking his bow and a poisoned arrow, he stood hiding in his pit. The time came when Shadanta was spotted to be alone. Sonutara took his bow and aimed the arrow at Shadanta. The arrow hit Shadanta and he roared in pain. Then Sonutara came out of the pit, and upon seeing him in robes, Shadanta extinguished his anger and bowed to Sonutara, asking, "Why did you wound me? Was it for your own advantage, or were you ordered by someone else?" Sonutara replied, "The Queen Subhadra had asked me to come for your task." Recognizing that this was the work of Jula Subhadra, he suffered patiently and thought, "She does not want my task, she wants my life. I will repay her with thoughts of kindness." Such is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if I were to be shattered to bones and ashes, I will not go back on my promise. He then said to Sonutara, "Take this task swiftly before I am consumed by thoughts of evil." The elephant Shadanta, standing 4 meters high, was too tall for Sonutara. So Shadanta, bending his body towards Sonutara, lay with his head down. Sonutara climbed up the trunk and thrust the saw into Shadanta's mouth. Shadanta suffered excruciating pain, and his mouth was charged with blood. Shadanta, seeing how Sonutara was unable to cut the tusk, wrapped the saw with his trunk and moved it backwards and forwards, cutting his own tusk. Sonutara then took the tusk, and before leaving, knowing that Sonutara would be attacked by his herd should he be spotted, said, "Walk backward on the same trail as you came, so that my herd would not find out." Then he added, I gave you my tasks not because I do not value them, but because the tasks of enlightenment are 100,000 times dearer to me than my own tasks. May this act be the cause of attaining enlightenment. Sonutara bowed down to Shadanta in gratitude, took his tools, and then walked away. When Sonutara had gone far away, Shadanta let out a cry and passed away. Taking the task, Sonutara headed back to the city and presented the task to the queen. When Subhada saw the task, she was filled with such great sorrow that she could not endure it, and on that very day, she too died. Upon her death, she was reborn in hell. Having told the story, the Buddha then said to the assembly, "This novice nun is Jula Subhada, and I was Shadanta, the elephant king. Yasodhara was Mahasubhada, and Devadatta was the hunter." In the Sutra of the collection of 6 paramitas, this jataka was classified under precepts. And so from this story, there are several ideas about precepts that we can observe from. The first idea about precepts is that they protect us from unwholesomeness. In this jataka, when Shadanta encountered a life-threatening situation, he did not allow himself to give rise to anger. He was aware of the downfalls of unwholesome actions, and instead of reacting with anger, he asked Sonutara to take his task swiftly before he was consumed by unwholesome thoughts. When we encounter an unreasonable situation like what Shadanta did, it is easy for us to give rise to anger and frustration. But instead, Shadanta tried to protect himself from giving rise to negative thoughts. Thus, what this tells us about precepts are that they help us to maintain a sense of awareness in preventing harmful actions and giving rise to negative ideas. The second idea about precepts is that they keep us from demanding a tooth for a tooth. There is a saying, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which means when one encounters harm, one reacts by seeking for compensation or retribution that is of an equal amount or degree to the injury or offense that was originally dealt. In this story, Shadanta's tasks were taken away from him, but instead of revenging, he repaid Jula Subhada with thoughts of giving and satisfying her desires. The Dhammabhata says, "Hatred never sees true hatred in this world. Through love alone they cease. This is an eternal law." So the idea of precepts in this case is to stop the cycle of unwholesome actions and instead to react with positive actions. The third idea about precepts is about keeping your promise. In the story, Shadanta thought to himself that even if he were to be shattered to bones and ashes, he will not go back on his bodhisattva vows. As we learnt from the beginning of the story, he was not a normal elephant. He was an elephant who had vowed to attain Buddhahood. And in order to attain Buddhahood, one needs to observe and stay true to the vows one has made, regardless of the situation. In the story, what made this point about keeping one's promise so exceedingly important is that although Shadanta was being taken advantage of and was even threatened with death, he kept to his promise of not giving rise to anger and returned hatred with kindness. If one can do this in such life-threatening situation, one can keep to one's vows in almost any situation. Also in Buddhism, there are basically 3 different forms of precepts, which are precepts for the maintenance of restraint, precepts related to the cultivation of good qualities, and precepts aimed at the improvement of the situation of sentient beings. And in this jataka, we can also see how Shadanta performed these 3 forms of precepts. As aforementioned, Shadanta upheld the precepts for the maintenance of restraint by not giving in to anger when encountering a difficult situation. He upheld the precepts related to the cultivation of good qualities by repeatedly taking refuge in the Triple Gem and showing respect to the hunters, thinking that he was a monastic, where he saw him dressed in robes. With regards to precepts related to the cultivation of good qualities, when Shadanta saw the hunter dressed as a monastic, he showed respect to the hunter, thinking that he was a monastic, even though this hunter has hurt him. And with regards to precepts aimed at the improvement of the situation of sentient beings, he repaid Jula Shubhada's negative deed with satisfying her desires. And also, Shadanta helped Sonutara to escape after he had taken his task. On the other hand, there is no limit to the negativity one can perform when one does not uphold precepts. Jula Shubhada is a concrete example in this jataka. When she saw Shadanta presenting a flower to Mahasubhada, she was jealous and schemed on killing Shadanta. If she had precepts in mind, she would have prevented herself from being a murderer. And although it seems that everything had taken place according to her plan, she ended up having to suffer in hell for her misdeeds. On the other hand, Shadanta perfected his practice of precepts and eventually went on to become Sakyamuni Buddha. Most people might think of precepts as restraints, and there are some who might hesitate to take the 5 precepts, thinking that they are rules that might cause inconvenience to their lives. But in fact, precepts are more like reminders that serve to protect ourselves and others from negativity, and to help us deal with difficult situations in positive ways. In Venerable Master Xingyun's teaching on the 5 precepts, he said that in undertaking and observing the 5 precepts, no one will be violating others, so that each and every one of us can obtain freedom together. Thus, in short, precepts are essential aids to our lives because they protect us from harm and help us to be free. That's all I would like to share for my talk today. Thank you again for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please remember to hit the subscribe button for more Dharma wisdom, and also hit the bell button next to the subscribe button so you will not miss the latest updates. Thank you everyone, and good night.